Welcome. I'm going to get started with some questions that I had from email. Earlier today in the first session, I forgot to hit the record button, so I missed recording the whole thing, the whole 2 hours. And I had answered these two questions for people who had written via email. So I want to go ahead and answer those again. And this time I'm certain it's recording. Please feel free to write in the chat over there if you want to leave some questions or comments. And then I will come back to those. Yeah, I'll come back to those. I also want to make one announcement too. Next week, next Monday is July 4th here in USA, which is a holiday, which means I'm going to cancel the 2 webinars on that day, just on July 4th. And then we'll pick up the following Monday. I'm going to take that day off because my cousins are coming to visit and celebrate the holiday together. So let me go ahead and get to these questions. Okay, so the first one says, I am in an emotionally abusive situation. My father is supporting me in vain. He is my only financial support, and that is exactly how he wants it. I cannot be on my own. How can a person in a situation like mine sever the ties if he is my only source of food, healthcare, etc.? What is a good beginning step for me or someone like me who is flat broke? Thanks in advance for any direction you can give me. I'm running out of time. So I'm not sure how old this person is. I don't know if this person is under 18 or over 18 or what the exact situation is. This is really, really hard when you're growing up with narcissistic parents and you realize what's going on and you realize how bad it is and you feel trapped. And it's very similar to the situation that can happen in adulthood, still with a narcissistic parent or also with a partner. Many times this happens with like a husband or a wife or just 2 people that got together and maybe they had kids or maybe they didn't. And one of them, was like convinced to give up their work or somehow, had to stay home, or that was just the decision they made. Like one of them had to take care of the kids, and they can get into these situations where they feel trapped financially. And it's even worse when you're married and, it gets very complicated. So in the situation with the parent, in all of these situations, I would get financial independence as soon as possible. I would get a job. I would get any job, like maybe starting off with a job that you don't love is going to have to happen, something just to start getting money coming in, just so that you can build a sense of financial independence and not have to depend on the narcissistic parent or the narcissistic partner, because they will always hold that over you. Most narcissistic parents, they want to keep you under their control. They want to keep you dependent, keep you stuck there so that, you don't follow your dreams, you don't become independent, you don't live your life, and potentially cut them off, once you realize what's actually going on. So again, I'm not sure how old this kid was who wrote to me. I think in USA, I think you have to be like 16 to get a job. Hopefully, he's 16 and can start making money, getting some sort of job, and recognize that it's okay that sometimes, we have to get some kind of job for the short while that we don't love. It might even feel like selling our soul a little bit because we just desperately need money to come in, and that's like step one. And then the next step is like you find something that's better, and then you find something that's better. And so, the more that you're able to start to become financially independent, the better off you are, because then you can get out of that situation. Having your own money coming in is the best situation. You want to be careful because, a narcissistic parent is going to be going through all of your stuff. You're not going to have any privacy. They're going to be going through your drawers, through your finances, through everything. So you're going to have to figure out how to manage that with your particular narcissistic parent. Like how can you manage it so that you can get this job and save money and not have them meddling, in your affairs. This can happen in a partnership. Sometimes if you're with a partner, it could be a man or woman, because mostly I hear from women in this situation, but I've also heard from men who gave up their job because, the woman was the narcissist. She wanted to be the breadwinner. He stayed home to take care of the kids, and then he got trapped. So in that scenario, you need to start like squirreling away money. You need to get a separate bank account. This is super sneaky, but this is what you're going to have to do in order to get out. and you have to have a separate bank account, something that person cannot find, and be very careful because they can find almost anything. Maybe you even have to get like a really close trusted friend or family member involved and put the money in their name and just start like squirreling away that money so that you can just jump like when you can, afford to do that. Maybe you have a friend, who can put you up for a short period of time where you save some money. Maybe you can contribute to some things around the house. Maybe even you have no money. Maybe it's more like, chores and things like that, or however it works out. The agreement that you can make with your friend, or maybe it's like a distant cousin or something, or maybe you just have to stick it out for a period of time until you can save enough money that you can get out and get your own place, or, get a roommate situation that feels comfortable and safe. And I would encourage you to be very cautious. So many times I got to that point, it was like 0 point, right? Where you lost everything in that relationship. And it could have been business too. That happened to me in business. So I lost everything and my business partner didn't pay me how he was supposed to pay me the buyout and everything. And I walked away without a dime. And so, I ended up jumping into another situation with a narcissist. I went to stay with a friend. She turned out to be a narcissist. I'd known her for 10 years. I didn't really realize who she was until I spent significant time with her. And within a few days, it was like pretty noticeable. And then I got trapped again. And then I had to like jump again. So be very cautious. You don't want to be like wasting all of your energy and resources jumping. Make sure, you save those resources and you plan well. And my advice to you would be like to plan until you can get to that point, of independence where you can be on your own. It could get really tricky in a roommate situation, in a friendship situation. If you grew up like this kid, grew up in a narcissistic family, it could be that a lot of people around you are narcissists and that you're attracting a lot of narcissists. So I would be very cautious moving forward in terms of who you jump in with, and make sure you're screening them well and being cautious. And maybe you even need to ask like a friend or some distant family member to help you out with some cash that you can borrow just to get up and out on your own. You got a job now, you got money coming in, and you work your way up. You put in good work at like a bottom level, wherever you are. Maybe you're 16, 17 years old, you don't have any work experience. So you can start in retail or customer service or something. And you prove yourself, you prove your character over time. Maybe you get some raises, and then maybe like you get a promotion, or maybe you realize that you don't want to stay there, but you've earned a good reputation. Now you can move to another job. They're going to give you like a good reference and whatnot. And be very cautious that you don't let on to your boss to know that like you're desperate for that job or you're desperate for the money, because what if it's a narcissist, and that boss, is going to manipulate you and they're going to exploit you because, you're there and you're desperate for that job. So that would be my advice in this situation. I think someone has a comment here. It says, yeah, it's very difficult. I was financially dependent on my parents until I was 21. I hated how they held it over me. Nothing feels better than paying your own way, even if you're broke. It's so true. Even if like you're just starting from nothing and you have very little money, it's so much better to not have to depend on them. There could be a period of time that you have to, in order to save that money up. And it sounds like that's the situation. I don't know what he meant by he's running out of time. I don't know if that means like your tolerance for this situation, how much more you can handle, or, maybe the father is like threatening to remove support and whatnot. And I just encourage you, like, if you're young and you're stuck in the situation of family and, maybe there's no possibility like to get emancipated and to get out of that, maybe you have to stick it out until you're 18. I just want to tell you that it's going to get better. Like life is going to be so much better. Don't give up now. Don't give up. It's not going to be like this forever. You've been raised in this reality, this paradigm of the narcissistic parent. And it's like emotional terrorism that you're living in. And no doubt there are days that you feel like you can't go on, because it's so deeply ingrained in you. And these are like your parents, like they're supposed to be looking out for you. And maybe only one is a narcissist, but the other is just like so hopelessly codependent that they don't get it and they don't realize it, or worse yet, maybe like they laugh about it because they're in the Stockholm syndrome, with that parent, and they just don't do anything to help you. And I just want to tell you, it's going to get better. Like you're going to get out, you're going to get on your own, you're going to start somewhere, you're going to get a stepping stone job, and you're going to move your way up. And don't give up on your dreams, and don't give up on your future, because it's going to be so much better. it can be so much better, and just trust that, the more difficult the situation you're stuck in right now, like the stronger, the more resilient you're going to be moving forward from that. Okay. Someone added in here too, my ex made a lot more money than me, a lot more. He was 7 years older than me and had more experience in his career than I did. I was 21. We would go out to eat and he would always offer to pay, even if I tried to pay. One time he grabbed a beer and finished it and said to me, I bought it, so I get to do whatever I want. I realized when he paid for me, he wasn't trying to be nice. He was trying to control me. That's the danger with the narcissist, that sort of thing, and they'll paint it like they're the savior at the beginning, like, oh, they're going to save you and they're going to support you and take care of you. And then you end up getting trapped, and then, so that's the idealization phase, where everything seems amazing and they're taking care of you and everything. And then the devaluation starts and it's like you can't get out because you're stuck. Like maybe you give up your apartment, you give up your house, you give up your living situation, maybe you give up your job, your income potential. Maybe you just got so destroyed by the relationship that like your brain's not working right, your memory's not working right, you're not functioning right, you couldn't hold on to your job, or maybe you're self-employed and like your creative flow just isn't happening and like you're not able to manage your business and so your finances suffer. Like this is a story of basically everyone, that gets involved in that kind of situation. So, always try to maintain your financial independence. That would be my suggestion. Like moving forward, always maintain your financial independence. Always keep some kind of like emergency money situation, like where you have like this fund and that fund is like always there. And maybe keep adding, and it's like several $1,000s that's just there hidden that no one else knows about. You definitely don't tell your partner, because what if your partner seems amazing and then like 2 years down the road, you meet this whole other person? Like maybe you signed a marriage document, or maybe you signed, a lease on an apartment, or maybe you bought a house together. And as soon as you did that, they flipped into like, the Mr. Hyde or Mrs. Hyde character. And now you're trapped, and so that's why you want to have that fund set aside. That way you're peace of mind. Maybe you never need it and hopefully not, but knowing that that money is there, that you could run if you have to, they'll really put your mind at ease, moving forward out of these situations. So I'm sending you a big hug to that kid who wrote the email. I'm really sorry. I know it's hard, but don't give up. Everything is going to get better. I have another question here from someone who emailed. She said, how do I learn to give myself what he gave? Obviously not the false sense of security, but real security that comes from myself. He was the monster and savior at the time, and now I don't have him anymore. In those moments when the storm is temporarily over and he reaches out a hand to show me he forgives me again, that's what I lived for. Now I have to find a way to comfort myself and stop associating him with love and safety. Yeah. So how do you give to yourself what they gave to you? So that starts with brutal self-honesty, the self-awareness, right? Self-honesty. What am I lacking? Where's my void? Like, what is that vulnerability that the last one honed in on and came in as the savior? Was it financial? Was it emotional? Was it living situation? Like, what was it that they came in and saved you, and fill that yourself, be there for yourself. And it could be that it's something that you don't really want to see about yourself. If it's emotional, especially, maybe you don't want to admit something to yourself. Maybe it's something that you're very aware of. Like maybe finances has always been your weak link. You got to do better for yourself. You got to make sure that you're financially taken care of so that you don't have to depend on another person. If it's emotional, make sure that you're taking care of yourself emotionally, that you're there for yourself, and honest with yourself, because like that's the start of self-love, is self-honesty. You got to get real with yourself, do that self-inventory and figure out like, where are you falling short? Like, where are you not there for yourself, and where can you be there better? What action can you take starting right now to do better for yourself in that way? Like, what's one step you can take right now to start that? And then take that step, and then ask yourself again, okay, what's another step I can take to make that better? Because if you don't have those holes and voids, the psychopath, the sociopath, the narcissist, the borderline, they're not going to hook in on that. They're not going to, try to idealize that and love bomb that in whatever way that is, and then get you hooked into them or trapped into them. So you got to be there for yourself. And that starts with the self-awareness and the self-honesty. Being real with yourself. That is the start of self-love. Being real with what you need, with how you need to take care of yourself, with what your vulnerabilities are. And the vulnerabilities are the things that we don't always want to look at, because it's harsh. It's harsh to admit those things, but that is how they hone in on you. They will find those things, like intuitively, uncannily. They will figure out exactly where that hole is, and they'll come in as the savior, and then they'll flip that around. So, moving forward, that's what you got to do, is be there for yourself. Oh, someone says, just a little late, missed that. No worries, no worries. I'm glad you made it. I think you might be someone new. That's wonderful. Welcome here. I'm glad you found the chat too. Feel free to type any questions or comments you have in the chat. I will read them always anonymously. Right now, I was reading a couple email questions that people had sent because they couldn't attend live. But then I go through the chat and I read these too. I'm not going to say your name, don't worry. If you would like to use your voice, you're welcome to use your voice as well. Just please keep in mind, don't say your name. If you do, I'll edit that out, but hopefully we don't have to do that. Just you can use your voice, and then, the only thing is that it will be on the YouTube recording. So if you don't want your voice to be on it, then just write it in the chat and I'll read it for you. Someone says, yeah, I was perplexed. Him being nice and understanding about my lower income turned into me owing him. He totally used that against me. When I got my big girl job, which still made a lot less than him, he wanted us to split the rent evenly, and I had to buy all the house amenities. He made 3 times more than me and still made me feel bad about not pitching in more and more when I was living paycheck to paycheck. He would have so much extra spending money for toys, and I used my extra spending money on toilet paper and laundry detergent. Yeah, that sucks. That's basically what happened in my marriage too, is like my ex-husband earned significantly more than me. And, at the end of the month, he would do an Excel table and he would draw it 50% down the line. And like, if he paid for a dinner, he would put that on there, and at the end of the month, like I owed him money or whatever, like when we split all the bills and everything. And like, he would itemize everything on there. And then he saved like $30,000 or $40,000 by the time we got divorced. And I had nothing because I was living paycheck to paycheck as a teacher. And that's just crappy. Like, if you ever find yourself in a situation like that, that's a big red flag. Big red flag. When a person's making you feel lesser than, first of all, even like emotionally, if they're making you feel lesser than because you earn less, that's not okay. That's typically the somatic archetype of the narcissist. The somatic person is very interested in physical beauty, money, status, finances, toys, that sort of stuff that makes them feel important. Stay away from those people. Very dangerous, and then if you're in a relationship with someone and you're earning less than them and they're making you feel like, you have to pay for 50% of everything and that they have every right, not a good situation. Not a good situation. That person doesn't care about you. You're better off. You're going to have a lot more money if you're living on your own and living within your means, because if you're living with this person, you're probably having to keep up with their means, like they want to go to expensive dinners or they want to have like an expensive flat or something. And like, maybe you can't afford it. And so that's really hard on you. And so, so many people I've heard from said, I got divorced and I suddenly had so much more money, or like I left so-and-so and suddenly had so much more money, because you're living within your means, what your means are, what your budget is. And then you don't feel like you have to like, keep up with that. Someone says, yes, I sent you an email telling you a bit of my story and I would not mind if you read it. I don't have a mic available right now. You're awesome. Dr. Simon is awesome. Richard Grannon and Sam Vankin are awesome. Actually, I would like you to read that email. Okay. I need to figure out which email it is. Hold on a second. I'm so sorry. Can you copy and paste it in the chat? Because it's going to take me a while to go through all my emails. I don't want to jump out of this for too long. Thank you. Okay, so that person said, oh my God, he had to have the best of the best. Yeah, that's the somatic. And then they expect you to keep up with them, or you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, or the worst is when, and how many times has any of you ever heard this phrase? I'm sorry, you're not more successful. Oh, wow. I just want to punch people when I hear that. It's like, there's no empathy there. All it says is I'm better than you, and I'm sorry you're not more successful. It's wow. When you hear that sort of thing, run. Don't hang out with people like that. He looks in the trash when I cooked to see if I bought the best kinds of food. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Those are not healthy people to be around, it's one thing to want to buy organic foods and that it's healthy, and it's better for your body and you're taking care of your health, if you can afford that and all that. But it's a whole other thing, to have to go to the gourmet grocery store, and buy all the gourmet products and put on these airs and stuff. Oh, I could only buy organic bananas. What do you mean? If you're with a person who's making you feel like you're not good enough or not keeping up with them, walk away from that. That's not a healthy situation. They had to be organic or else they were bad for you. Okay. I eat almost all organic because I have very severe allergy to a chemical that's in the food in this country and any other country where Monsanto has spread Roundup. I have an extreme allergy to it. And unfortunately, I have to pay extra. My food bill is pretty high just for one person, and I can never eat out. I can never eat at a restaurant or someone else's house because the smallest bit of contamination makes me really sick, and it causes this horrible, disgusting thing to happen to my skin. It looks like radiation burns and pus boils, and it's horrible. So I'm unfortunately stuck there, and it's not some sort of snobbery kind of thing. I wouldn't expect someone else to have to keep up with me. I have to keep up with me. I have to do that for my health. That's a different situation. But if somebody is all about the label and status of it, just for the way it looks, versus the health, if it's about health, that's one thing. And in this guy's situation, he had the money and he could afford it. He could have pitched in a lot more for that food since you made a lot less than him. And that was really unfair of him to do that to you. Okay, she says, I'm all about organic, but he started huge arguments about it. He ate crap all the time, but when I bought food, it had to be organic. So that's the double standard. That's the hypocrisy and the double standard of the narcissist, where you have to do what they don't have to do. And yeah, that's a bad situation, definitely. Okay, someone says, I'm sorry I'm late. Can you give examples of glibness in narcopaths? So the glibness, that's that superficial charm, very charming, smooth talking kind of thing. So what does that look like? Well, that's the person when you meet them, they don't fumble on their words. They don't stutter. They don't get nervous. They are smooth talking. It's they're talking there's no problem, and they're speaking very eloquently maybe, and they're saying all the right things. And the main thing that they're doing, it's called distraction and entertainment. Right? So they're doing things to distract you from who they really are. They're distracting you with superficial appearances and whatnot, and they're entertaining you. They're putting on these monologues, and they're entertaining you with their stories. They're not just sharing stories. Two people just share stories or whatever, and that's interesting. But they're putting on a performance when they're telling you that story. And and they would love if everybody else around, the rest of the bar, the rest of the restaurant would listen to them. Maybe they raise their voice higher and they look around, for approval and attention from other people, that sort of thing. They want to be the center of everything. Sexually, this type, they know how to do everything perfectly usually, and they have this routine that they go through, and and it's you think it's amazing sex. Really, this is something they've rehearsed over and over again. They're perfect. They don't do anything clumsy or silly. Two people who are just getting to know each other and just, getting involved sexually, you do clumsy things, like your bodies don't know each other and you're like trying to get to know each other, and it feels a little awkward at first, you know, and like you don't really understand each other's bodies yet. And maybe you laugh at some things, but that would never happen with one of these smooth talker types. Like they're just like going to come in as like the seducer or the seductress. If it's a woman, you know, everything is perfect and that sort of thing. They're always putting on airs, you know, like walking around town and everything, like everything is for like the appearance of it. And it always looks like so perfect. It's too perfect, you know, so perfect. It's too perfect. Usually they're paying a lot of attention to like what they're wearing, and it has to like meet all these standards, and like, and they'll point out, you know, other people's fashion sense, and maybe they'll criticize that or put them down, you know, for not being so perfect. And maybe they'll put you down because like they don't like your shoes, or like you're wearing the same handbag that you always wear and you don't have like a ton of handbags to choose from, and it doesn't have a designer name on it, you know. And maybe they say little subtle, the glib type in my experience is usually the more subtle type, the more covert type. Usually. And they put on this air like they're the most interesting person in the world, and everything they say you should be like, oh, you know, and they're just too perfect. That's usually how, yeah, somebody adds in here like great actors. Yeah, that's usually how they come across. That's usually how I've experienced them, is in that way. So when you seeing like too much charm, you know, too much smoothness, it's just too perfect. It's like they've done this before. Like, have you ever been to like a bar or something and someone came up to you and they just started talking to you? You don't know this person, and it's like they're putting on a performance, and you wonder like how many times they've done that before. But if you don't look at it at the deeper level, if you just look at the surface, you could get easily confused. You could get caught up in that distraction and entertainment. And that's what they're doing, is like they're managing the impressions, the distraction and the entertainment. And most of the people like at the party or whatever, you know, they're just roaring along. Like they just think it's hysterical. It's wonderful. And like this person is like the entertainer, and they're just fooled. Like it's just a superficial charm. There's nothing real beneath it. And when this glib person like professes their love to you, approximately 10 days to 2 weeks in, right? They're already telling you they love you and you're their soulmate and they can't live without you and they've waited all their life for you and they have to have you exclusively, just all exclusively right now. But, you know, they're not telling you that they're still seeing other people, but they can't share you. But, you know, they're moving in very quickly on that love. But, you know, and on the surface, it sounds lovely, but when you feel it, there's nothing there. And that's the thing about the narcissist, is everything is on the surface. It's all image. It's all superficial. Nothing is real. And what's real is your feeling. That's what you need to pay attention to in order to tell if that's a narcissist or not, or someone on the cluster B personality disorders. Like, tune into your feeling, tune into your body. Like, what does that feel like in your body? Does something feel uncomfortable? And not just the nervousness of meeting someone new, but does something feel really uncomfortable? Like you want to walk away uncomfortable? Does something feel icky? Does something feel like, do you feel like exhausted, like so tired talking to this person? None of those are good signs. So check in with the feeling. And the thing about the feeling is your intuition, right? Is that feeling. That's what's real. You're not going to usually find the rational, like the rationalization confirmation of that. Like on the surface, everything looks great, but you have this feeling and it's gnawing at you. Listen to the feeling instead. You may not get that rational, superficial confirmation yet, you know, that this isn't good. Like on the surface, it might look really good, but it's not. So listen to the feeling. Listen to that first and foremost, because everything the narcissist is doing is on the surface. None of that's real. When you actually ask them to talk about their feelings about something, very quickly you'll realize it's all a bunch of fluff. And it's all like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And they're like idealizing things, right? There's nothing real there. And that's what you got to feel for, is does this feel real? Or is this just like a superficial kind of thing? Someone says, I used to tell my ex that my family loved him, and he would respond, of course, I've got them fooled. I never knew what he meant by that until years later. Wow. Sometimes they straight up tell you who they are, you know, like they'll say things like that and you're like, what? And they're like, I'm just kidding, baby. Or, you know, I didn't mean it like that. But really, they're telling you who they are. Like people will paint themselves if you allow them to. Oh, welcome. Someone says first time here. Awesome. Welcome. Your videos have helped me a lot. Thanks. Awesome. I have a question. It's about guilt. I still feel so guilty about everything. I left this person 3 times and I went back 3 times until he finally discarded me in the most horrible way. I really don't know how to not feel so guilty anymore. So what are you feeling guilty about? Are you feeling guilty about like staying, or are you feeling guilty about accepting the burden of the responsibility of everything in the relationship? Are you feeling guilty about like compromising your integrity and doing things that you weren't okay with because of the pressure? If you can just clarify that, then I can go on that a little bit. Okay, about staying in the relationship. Okay, yeah. So, you know, the guilt of like, oh, I saw it, right? Like I saw the red flags, I saw the signs, but I ignored, you know, the intuition. I ignored what I saw. Why? Well, because you wanted to make it work. Like you were invested in that relationship. You invested a lot of time and energy and you were in love with that person, you know, and you wanted to make it work. Like you saw their flaws and, you know, because you are able to love unconditionally, you overlooked the flaws and you said, it's okay. We're going to get through this. Let's get through this. You know, nobody's perfect. You know, I want to love you. I'm a tolerant person. I'm a patient person. I'm a forgiving person. I'm a compassionate person. And they exploited those things, you know? And so you really got to put the label on that manipulative person to let yourself off that hook, you know, the label that they were manipulating you, the label that they were a con artist, the label that they tricked you, that they exploited those good qualities that you have, and they used those to get you to stay around, you know, and that those good qualities that you have are excellent qualities to have as a human being, and investing those wonderful qualities in a positive relationship with a healthy person is a wonderful thing. You know, someone who is healthy will love and respect those qualities that you have, and they will not exploit them, and they will not exploit you for having those wonderful qualities. They will choose you because they love those. Whereas, you know, the psychopath, the sociopath, the narcissist, the borderline, they pre-qualified you because of those things, because they knew they could exploit them. Like it was a setup from the beginning. And so when you recognize and accept that, you know, and you realize that like you were just there trying your best, it wasn't your fault. You know, you were trying your best. You were guilted, you know, into going back again and again, you know, guilt tripped into going back, and like you pushed all the buttons, you know, probably like insinuated that you weren't a compassionate person if you didn't go back, or you weren't forgiving, or you weren't really, you know, unconditionally loving if you couldn't love them for these things. And that's just like a really gross way of exploiting someone's really positive, beautiful spiritual qualities like that. So, you know, got to honor those qualities in yourself and like recognize that those aren't negative qualities. It wasn't the fault of those qualities. It was because that person is a manipulative person, you know, and unfortunately at the very, very beginning, we didn't see it, you know, like maybe we saw some of the red flags, but we didn't really want to see it. Like there was something else there that we wanted to see, the distraction, the entertainment, whatever that was, you know, the filling of whatever void it was within inside us, you know. So now moving forward, you know, what can you do for yourself? How can you take care of yourself? How can you love yourself? How can you nurture yourself? How can you respect yourself? How can you set new boundaries? How can you portray yourself differently to the new person that you're going to meet, whether it's a friendship or a potential new lover or someone new at work, you know, so that you're protecting who you are and what you value, like these positive qualities that you have, you know, but that you can also be aware of what's coming at you. you know, that you have filled that part in yourself so that that person can't exploit that hole, that void that you have. They can't come in acting as the savior, you know, and fill you with that emotional need or that financial need or whatever that need is, you know, which is what got you knocked off center, probably is something like that. So just got to forgive yourself, you know, and that forgiveness work. I just made a really quick video, like 5 minutes today, about the forgiveness, the self-forgiveness. And that's how sometimes that's so much harder than forgiving the other person. You know, like when you disappoint yourself, sometimes it's so much harder to get over that than when someone else disappoints you, you know, and the forgiveness, it doesn't just happen like all at once. It's like layer after layer after layer that you dig in, that keeps coming off, you know, and you work more and more into that. And by being there for yourself, by taking care of yourself, you're already sending a new message to yourself that you're worthy of that care, that you're worthy of that love. And then you don't have, you know, those holes that people will try to fill. Does someone want to talk? I hear a microphone. Okay. Let me get caught up here. Okay, someone else said same here. It sounded like her scenario. Someone asked, why do I want him to realize he has issues? The mask is off now. I really want him to get help. I wish I didn't care. I used to wish for a long-lasting relationship with him. It's been over for a month, never to return. Okay, good. I'm glad you realize you're not going to go back. A month is still really raw and really fresh, you know, out of this situation. And it's going to take a lot longer to heal from this. So, you know, why do you want him to realize he has issues? Maybe because it's like you want to relieve yourself of the burden of knowing that it wasn't your fault. You know, you want him to accept responsibility, because the narcissist doesn't accept self-responsibility. It's always your fault. You know, your reaction to the abuse is the problem, not the abuse itself, right? And so like they're always putting everything on you, and you end up leaving with like this enormous weight of the blame and the guilt and the responsibility of everything, even though only half of the relationship was your responsibility, and everything that that person did was entirely their responsibility. So yeah, you know, part of you wants the justice, part of you wants them to admit what they did, to accept accountability and responsibility. That's natural, that's normal. I think probably we all felt that way, you know, every time. But the thing is that, you know, the true narcissist, the true cluster B is not going to admit it. They'll come up with every excuse in the book, you know, before they accept any accountability. And if they ever accept any shred of accountability, it's only because they can blame you for it. Well, I only did that because you blah, blah, blah. You know, oh, I only did that because you were blah, blah, blah. And that's like, that is the only resemblance of accountability that you'll get for them. They just don't own it. They don't at all. That's their whole shtick, is to pass everything onto someone else, to some sort of scapegoat, to not have to take responsibility for themselves, you know? So, you know, is he going to get help? Probably not. You know, like people who only have a few tendencies of the cluster B traits, they might get help. You know, if there's enough impetus in their life, if they have a sense of actual healthy shame, you know, recognizing what they did, maybe they'll get help. Someone who's like at the extreme, like a true narcissist, a true sociopath, a true borderline, a true psychopath, they're not going to get help because there's nothing wrong with them. They don't think anything's wrong with them. They like the way they are. It's serving them. You know, they get what they want from people by using these covert, aggressive, manipulative tactics. And so why would they want to change? You know, that was Dr. George Simon's thing. Like, why would they change? Because they're getting everything that they want. They want to win, and they want to be right, and they want to avoid all, you know, self-accountability in the process. So chances are he's never going to do that. And the sooner you give yourself that acceptance, that realization that he's probably never going to say sorry. He's probably never going to admit what he did wrong. He's probably never going to admit that he has issues. He's probably never, you know, going to go get help. And there's nothing you can do about that. Like there is no true closure with a narcissist, with anyone on the cluster B personality disorder. Like, you just have to be there for yourself and give that validation and that closure to yourself so you can move forward, you know, without holding on to that. Because the sooner you can release that and accept that that's not yours, like you can't own that. there's no amount of your love that can fix that. I'm sorry, and the sooner you accept that, the better, because that's when you'll be able to really start to be free, to move forward, to heal yourself, to self-heal and to recover from that situation, so that, you can meet new people, have new friendships, have new social situations, maybe meet a new life partner at some point down the road, once you feel healed and free enough from that situation. But holding on for that, it's just futile. I'm sorry. It's probably never, ever going to happen. That's just not the way that they work. Someone says, I actually saw my ex today unexpectedly. He tried to hug me and I said, no, do not touch me. And I jumped in my car and drove away. I felt so mean and rude, but I just couldn't. I loved this man for so long. I still love his non-existing side, but I'm getting better every day. You did a good job. I know, you said you feel guilty. Like that's normal, because you have a conscience. Like that's what the guilt means. The guilt means you actually have a conscience. They don't. That's why they don't have guilt, and that's why you second guess and you self-doubt, because you have the capability to have the guilt, but you did nothing wrong there. Like you would feel guilty if it was like a normal, healthy person who like treated you with respect and love, if you didn't give them the time of day and you told them to go away. But this isn't who this is. That's not who you're dealing with, and accept that, like, you can be a compassionate person who has limits on your compassion, and those limits on your compassion protect you. You have to protect yourself from these people. You absolutely have to, because these are dangerous people. They will exploit that compassion. They will take advantage of that. And then you will not have compassion for yourself and for other people who deserve that compassion. So you have to have limits. It doesn't mean you're not a compassionate person. It doesn't mean you're not a loving person. It just means that you cannot safely give your compassion and love to that person and take care of you and your boundaries at the same time. But you did good work. Good job on that. Someone says, oh, it's too long for a single message. I'll break it up. I think 3 will do. Okay. I'm going to leave out your really personal information, okay, that you're putting in here. Okay, I'm going to say a few things, but I'm going to leave out most of your personal information. So you were saying that, you know only the last name of your biological parents, that your father was 22 and your mother was 16. Stepfather, the son of an immigrant Russian Jew, and stepmother of a farming family in Iowa. You're the youngest of 3 adoptees, 1 stepsister and stepbrother. Stepfather is relatively successful, upper middle class. Stepfather dies around your age 1.5, and you're left with your stepmother. We all know now that she was angry at the stepfather for dying because she did not originally want us and felt stuck. Okay, a bunch of other messages came in. Let me see, where is your other one? Happening. Okay, when you were 8, you were left alone much of the time. You created an invisible friend to talk to. Your stepmother and stepfather, both alcoholics, beat each other. Attempts to repair marriage. They move further east, but it doesn't change, of course. You come home from school at 12 to find your stepmother being hauled to the hospital. She attempted suicide. Recovers, divorces abusive second husband, but never recovers. Drinks herself to death eventually. Your stepsister left home at 16 during this era to be raped by a stepfather. Stepmother moves you and your brother further east. Life during this time is me and my brother trying to find food, but only can find noodles and butter. Gallons of wine and vodka have replaced food. We are forced to try to find money when she is passed out to get food. This causes my brother to become the black sheep, and after much beating, sent away to foster home. First experience with psychotropics at 13. You became the golden child and stepmother's psychologist at 13. Parentification. Your mother occasionally let you have a drink in restaurants, lying about your age. Straight A student through 8th grade, but incompletes 9th. GED later in tech school. Okay, honey, there's a lot of information here. Can we can we condense this into, I can't read all of this. It's going to take up a lot of time. Can you maybe condense this into some really direct maybe questions that you have that you'd like me to help you clarify? Okay, it looks like the bottom line you said down here is she parentified you. Okay, meaning you had to step in and kind of like be the parent. This is often the case of children of alcoholics, where like they have to grow up too quickly. Like they have to be adults too quickly. They miss out really on the childhood because the parent is so irresponsible and passed out and drunk and making very poor decisions that one or more of the children have to grow up real quickly and often become a codependent adult because of that. A lot of teachers talk about recognizing the sign in their students and young kids, like realizing the ones that are like way grown up for their age, you know, and being like the fixers, the caretakers, having come from alcoholic parents. Okay, just read the last paragraph. Okay. He doesn't want to be overly sensitive, but his very life may actually be in danger. The son displays over and over all 9 of the malignant narcissist traits, God complex and all. Of course, if confronted, would be denied, though he is smart enough not to threaten me physically or verbally right now for fear of jail. You've been playing Grey Rock pretty good for years after some early encounters that began his investigation into what was going on, but you fell off that protective layer recently and mentioned NPD to him, and he attacked you verbally. So the NPD will probably go study and build offenses to obfuscate. Yeah, you were the healer back then. Okay. So that is, oh, that's your mate's son. Okay. She's narc, he is malignant. Okay. I just don't understand. What is the question though? Like what would you like me to address here? What's the question, please? Okay, I'm going to let you clarify that question in the chat, and then I'm going to go back and pick up a couple things that I missed up here from someone else. Someone asked, just wondering, but when you upload the YouTube video, does it only show you or the other people on webcams? It's only me. So I keep this thing where I pin my face on the video. If ever it accidentally switches to someone, like their voice comes on or something, I try to pin it back to myself real quick. And I always edit and process these videos. I listen to like every minute of the video because I want to write down the themes that are happening, but I'm also making sure that no one's face or name or anything is on there. So if for some reason someone else's like face pops on or whatever, I'm going to black that out, you know, in the recording, or worst case scenario, I'd have to just cut out that piece so that nothing would show. I'm going to be very protective of everyone's identity. Don't worry about that. Someone said, okay, how can I stop thinking about this person? It's always in my mind. Yeah. So the obsession part is huge part of the PTSD, the CPTSD, the particular kind that's formed after narcissistic abuse, where the victim is like obsessed with the abuser, with the memories, the experiences, the events, each individual incident, and you're just like going over and over these things. And like maybe you wake up in the morning and it's like the first thing on your mind, like something is on your mind about that person, you're thinking about them, and it's like the last thing on your mind at night, and like you can't stop thinking about them. You have to practice redirecting your mind to something else. That's called mindfulness, right? Is when you become aware of your thoughts, like you catch yourself, right? Thinking about this person, him or her. You suddenly think about them and you realize, oh, there I am. I'm ruminating again about this person. I have to redirect to something else, you know? So what is that something else? Is it work? Is it, you know, some kind of artistic thing, some kind of creative project? Is it your dog or your cat? Like, what can you do to redirect your focus away from that. And it's going to take a lot of practice at first, like a lot, because your mind is like, your mind on default is going to go there. Like anytime you get into that idle place where you don't have to be on and focused on something, your mind is going to go there at the beginning. It's normal. It happens to all of us. So, you need to keep redirecting and redirecting and redirecting your mind. And over time, your mind will start to automatically do that. I don't recognize your name. You might be a new person around here. I don't know if you know about my SANA, the 12-week series that I did. You can listen to it. You can stream it for free on my website. You can download the MP3s for less than $1 each. You can download the whole 12-week series for $10. There's a couple weeks on there about like hacking your brain and reprogramming your mind. And the practices in there will help you do that, will help you to redirect from those old unhealthy patterns, from that obsession and everything, and to focus on new things. So I recommend checking that out. Someone added in here, it's funny, I have an MD in clinical psychology and I didn't see it. And my colleagues and friends still don't believe me. Yes, so work on it. Thanks. Yeah, that happens, right? Like I had been in holistic healing for over a decade and I didn't see it. I wasn't trained in narcissism. I didn't know anything about that. But like I was trained in healing and recognizing patterns and things, and I just didn't see it. And so many times you'll hear about people who are psychologists, and sometimes they marry narcissists. Like I've met several psychologists who married narcissists, or even psychiatrists, and they just don't see it. And it could be that they just didn't have any, like they didn't recognize their own experiences. Maybe someone really didn't have any experiences with narcissists or cluster B personality disorders. Maybe they took one class in school on the cluster B personality disorders, but reading about it in a textbook is like a whole different situation than living it and experiencing the kind of like mind fuckery that it is to be in a relationship with one of these people, that you just can't get it unless you've been in it. And, the worst thing is that some of your colleagues could be narcissists. Like there are a lot of narcissists in psychology, in psychiatry, in those fields. And that's a big danger too. So it could be that they don't believe you because they just can't imagine what that's like. They can't imagine a human being would do that sort of thing. Or maybe they pretend not to believe you because that's who they are, and they don't want to be called out for what they're doing. But yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone in that. I hear this story a lot. Okay, let me get caught up here. Okay, to that person from before, are you going to condense? Do you have a question that maybe you can condense that into? I would be happy to address that. I just don't want to, that's going to take a long time to read all of this. Oh, okay. Yes, I wanted to share with Meredith so she can later use as example of how bad it can get. Okay. Yeah, it can get really bad, like really, really bad. I hear stories all the time about how bad it can get. You can go onto YouTube and hear some other stories about survivors too. You can read some things online. Like you're not alone. I'm really, really sorry that you went through such a horrible, horrible childhood experience. And what I can tell you about that though, is that you survived, like you made it out there. I don't know how old you are. You made it out. Like that means how strong are you? Like how resilient are you that you survived that? You're here right now. Like not only did you survive, but you figured out what it was. And you're here now working on yourself. That's amazing. Like that's a miracle of itself. You're meant to be here. You're meant to be here in life is what I mean. Like you survived that for a reason. And if you went through something that difficult, it's because you have something major to do this life. Like you probably have something major to contribute to people in this life. Really. And if you haven't discovered what that is yet, keep looking, because, trauma, like the very nature of trauma is transformative. Like it changes your life. And a lot of times, we look back at the things that would happen and, the common PTSD thing is nothing will ever be the same. And no, nothing will ever be the same, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. it can be so much better. You know, the nature of trauma being so transformative, something is changed in you, something is forever changed. And now maybe something in that, you can extract some kind of treasure from your trauma and move forward and create something beautiful that you offer people, something that helps other people in some way, some kind of contribution that you want to make to others. And I really challenge you to look into that, to look into, you know, who are you and what are you here and what are you here to give the world? What service do you want to offer? Because you survived that for a reason. That was not for nothing. You know, I have my first doctor appointment tomorrow. Good. To try and meet anyone through a group to help and hope I don't get re-victimized. I'm going to work on the issues. I skipped the first 3 times that caused me to have it to occur again. I'm 56, no assets, looking at homelessness. Yes, I must cure my CPTSD. I have no friends, family, or support right now. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I really recommend, if you use like Facebook, there is like, for example, narcissist support group. There's a lot of people who have been through this. I mean, there's like thousands of people in that group who have been through this. Connect with some kind of support group, even if it's online, of people who have been through this particular kind of abuse, narcissistic abuse, like not just codependency, anonymous and stuff like that, because it might help. Okay, so one of your parents was an alcoholic. That might help in some degree, but to understand the narcissistic part, really want to connect with other people who have been through it, because you probably feel very alone. You probably feel like you're losing your sanity at times. Like we all felt like that at times. And to connect with people who really get it, it's like so validating to like share your story with them, and other people share their story with you, and you recognize that you're not alone. This is a thing, and it's happening to millions of people around the world, and other people get it, you know, and you can say like a little thing and they totally get the big thing. You know, you don't have to like over explain things. Like they totally get what happened because they went through something so similar. It's very healing. And I'm so sorry, you know, that it got to the point that you got down to that 0 point. I've been at that 0 point too, and you're going to find something inside yourself. Like there is an enormous amount of strength and resiliency inside yourself to have made it this far, you know, so tap into your inner resources, tap into the outer resources, put the intention out there that the universe sends you positive opportunities, that the right people will come into your life to connect you, you know, maybe with shelters or friends. Somehow something comes together for you so that you can start to move forward, start to get your feet on the ground, you know, start to save some money, start to get on with your life, have a new life, you know, that, you know, setting your mindset is first. So, you know, I recommend, I think you are new. I think I saw you just joined us today. Listen to my SANA series. You can stream it for free online. You know, when you get to Wi-Fi connection, you can listen to that all for free. You know, and each week, each of those episodes unlocks and unwinds another issue, another part of the self-healing and the recovery after narcissistic abuse. It will help you if you do the practices and the meditations, and then learn everything you can for free online. You know, go to psychopathfree.com, go to all the different groups on Facebook, do some Googling, listen to YouTube survivors and professionals, and just get as much information as you can for free. And that will help you, you know, to start getting going. That's what I did when I had nothing, when I was like so broke. Is like I would listen to everything for free that I could listen to from coaches and survivors and professionals. And I got my stuff together. And you're going to get your stuff together too. Don't lose hope. You can do this. Yes, my mother's story is just to show how I became a people pleaser, only wanting to get a no drama life. Thank you. I'm listening. I have no job now. Used to make 50K, down to 4-digit savings. Yeah. So, you know, this happens to a lot of people. You're not alone. And I'm not saying that to make you feel like you're not special or something. Like I'm saying that to tell you that like there are so many people who have been through this situation. This is often what it gets to, getting out of these situations, and you can move forward from this. Like you just want to be really resourceful with your inner resources and your material external resources, like, you know, being financial resources, places to live and how, to get food and such. And, is there any kind of like bartering that you can do, and the people that you connect yourself with, because you want to connect with the right people who can help you get connected to the right things that help you step up and forward, getting yourself a new job, because why, your self-esteem, your self-worth gets plummeted, right? And then you feel like you're not worthy. And then it's really hard to get another job, or it's hard to get a better job because your self-worth and your self-esteem is so low, and your employer perceives that, and other people perceive that, and it's not, they're not like resonating with you. So as you work on those things and you build that stuff up inside you, then you present yourself and like you have a higher self-esteem, you have a higher sense of self-worth. Now people are more interested in talking to you and offering you possibilities of work and things. So you can do it. You just really have to be resourceful. You have to tap into every resource that you can tap into, and you will see down the road, like you're going to look back and be like, wow, how far did I come from? How strong am I? How resilient am I? That is a testimony to the resilience, of the human being, to be able to overcome that kind of trauma and to triumph through that. I did it once, lived on my own, and learned that I do live positively when not under stress. Thanks again. We can drop me now, right? My vibration is awful right now. If I make it, it won't happen again. That's the thing, like you said, when you're under stress and living under stress, like when you're living in an environment with these people, it sucks the life out of you. Like it sucks everything. It sucks your finances. It sucks your emotional. It sucks your mental. It sucks your spiritual power. Like everything, just gets sucked dry and destroyed. And it is so hard to make anything happen when you're in that environment. Like it's so hard to override that. Often you have to get to another environment before you can start to do that. Sometimes you just have to find it in yourself, in that environment, to get out. And usually you just have to put up that wall and that boundary and not share anything with those people. Don't share anything about your dreams, your hopes, your plans for the future, because they will destroy them. They will sabotage you. They will do anything to stop you from moving forward, because it doesn't work for them if you move forward. They don't have you like this. And that's why you want to prove them wrong. You want to take the haters, you want to take those messages and that energy, and you want to transmute that into fuel, into motivation to do better, to get somewhere else in life, to get out of the gravity of the past, to reach the escape velocity. You can do it. It's really, really hard when you're still in it, but you can do it. You just have to not let them in on anything you're doing. You have to sneak away. You have to plan everything clandestinely. And I know when you have a sense of conscience, you feel guilty about that. You feel almost like you're doing what they're doing, but that's counter manipulation. And sometimes it gets really drastic like that. And you have to use that kind of counter manipulation to get out, to get to safety, to start your life over, to protect your hopes and dreams, so that you can take those steps forward, so they don't ruin it for you. It's really hard when all that is on top of you. And you're right, when you're out on your own, you learn so much more is possible than you ever knew, because when you lived in that, you didn't believe that you were worthy or that it was possible. And all of that fear propaganda, and teaching you to self-doubt and everything, it destroys your potential. And then you get out of that and you realize there's so much more that you can do with your life. There's so much more possibility than you ever believed. Let me plug in here 1 second. I have a moratorium on any drinking, etc., so I can't be accused this time. God, when her son abused me the other day and I fell off the gray rock, I got angry, called him an NPD, and now it's going to escalate. Okay. Yeah, most likely there will be a retaliation. They'll often go lick their wounds and then come back with the attack, some sort of escalation. The gray rock, when you're living in it and you're having contact with these people out of necessity, you can't get out of the situation yet. You can't go no contact yet. No contact is ideal, but if you absolutely can't yet, that's when you have to do the gray rock. Do not react. And it is so hard when you're in that situation not to react, because they're, and they'll notice that if you don't react, they escalate and they push and provoke, and they escalate their provocations until they get you to explode, because that's what they want. Don't give them what they want. Easier said than done. But in the moment, that's when you got to focus on the mindfulness and the mindfulness in the moment, and like focus inside your body, focus inside your being, and notice what's happening inside your body when that happens. You know, when they say what they say or do what they do to provoke you, to instigate you, focus on that reaction and be so mindful and present in your body of what's happening that you start to change that, you know, that you don't allow that to come out automatically, that you stop it. You know, like maybe it's anger, maybe it's coming up from your gut and you feel it raising and raising. And by the time it gets to here, now it's coming out of your mouth, you know, and you don't want it to do that. So you want to stop it before that point. You want to breathe into it. You know, I was explaining earlier today, which unfortunately the webinar, I didn't record it. So that all got lost. But what I was talking about is locating that place in your body where you feel that anger or whatever it is that's triggering in you that makes you want to react. Locate it in your body and breathe into it. Breathe into the epicenter, like find the epicenter inside your being and breathe into that and breathe through it. Like breathe through the pain, through the resistance, through the discomfort. And you'll see like it starts to transmute itself like automatically, and like it loses its power. You know, it only has power when it's hidden, right? So like when it's like repressed and not noticed and it just comes out automatically, and like we didn't have the self-awareness to catch it before it came out, right? But when you're focusing on it, you're already changing it. It's already changing because you're shining the light of awareness, the light of consciousness on it. And it can't thrive in that light. Like it's exposed now, right? And so it starts to change. And so focus on your reaction, because that is the only thing that you have control over. You have no control over that other person. You have no control over their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, anything that they're doing. The only control you have is over yourself, over your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own actions, your own attitudes, right? So take control of that, because it's the only thing you can control. Don't react to their provocations. Do everything you can in your power to not react. Don't beat yourself up, you know, for when it happened, because it'll happen. You know, it happens to the best of us, right? It'll happen at times, you know, when you're caught off guard, or you caught weak in a weak moment, or maybe you're tired, or maybe you like drank a little bit or something and you felt your defenses were weak. It would be a good idea to be completely sober in that environment so that you're completely in control. And you can cultivate that awareness and gain that awareness over yourself and be ever more present and aware of that. And then the other part of Gray Rock, you know, is to just be boring, uninteresting, unopinionated, you know, because they're looking for something juicy. They're looking for pain and they're looking for pleasure. They're looking for the extremes. Are you really happy or are you really sad? Either way, they're excited. You know, if you're really happy, they're going to get in there and they're going to ruin that for you. And then they're going to be really excited about that. Or if you're really sad, they're going to get in there and they're going to provoke you and like poke at you right where it hurts, because they get off on that, you know. So don't give them that. Don't give them any kind of emotion. Just be totally monotone, boring. Don't even have an opinion about anything, because a lot of these types, you know, you'll have an opinion about something and then they'll take the devil's advocate opinion. They don't even believe in it. They just take the opposite opinion just to challenge you, you know, just to get you all upset and defend your point of view, whatever. Don't even go there. Try not to get caught up in the self-defense, because you'll end up wasting a lot of energy and then they'll get in there, you know. So just completely Gray Rock it out. Have the least amount of communication as possible, the least amount of contact. Spend as much time as you can out and about, you know. Go to the library if you have to use the internet to do job searching or whatever you have to do. Spend as much time as you can out and about so that you don't have to spend time there. I felt like I was enforcing a boundary because it would give him the right to do it again if I just complied. But I did it wrong. I hear you and I try. I can't believe how little self-care I have given myself. That's because you were taking care of other people. You know, you were taught to be the fixer, the caretaker from a very young age, you know, and so that became ingrained in your habits. And so you self-sacrificed in order to take care of other people because you were taught you had to do that to survive as a child. But now you're an adult, so you can give yourself the permission to take care of you first. You know, in the airplane, When the oxygen masks come down, they tell you put on your oxygen mask first and then situate the child or the elderly person next to you. The child comes next to you, because if you pass out because you don't have oxygen, then you can't save that child. So you have to take care of yourself first. It's not a selfish thing. You have to take care of yourself so that you can help anyone else. You have to take care of yourself so that you can show up in every moment with 100% of what you've got. Right. And then you resented it later. Yeah. That's the mess that most of us got into, right? Was pleasing other people, caretaking other people, fixing other people because we felt like we had to, but then later we ended up resenting that we didn't take care of ourselves and that we gave so much to someone else. So that's the lesson, learned moving forward. Take care of you first. Someone else says, I think the tough part about me creating boundaries is feeling guilty about it. I'm actually happy that I have this guilt. It's a sign I am compassionate, but also not going to let a narc take advantage out of me. It's a crazy complex. I have learned over the last few months not to act on guilt so quickly. Yes. So like you said, the guilt is the sign that you have compassion, that you have a conscience, right? The manipulative people, they have not guilt. They have no guilt because they don't have a conscience. They can choose wrong, knowingly choose wrong, and it won't bother them because they justify it somehow with a rationalization, with an excuse, with a whatever. They justify it so they don't have the guilt about it. And so when you set a boundary, they will immediately guilt you or shame you about having that boundary. So it's like an extra test. Like first you got up the courage to set the boundary, right? Because if you were codependent, you learned that you didn't have the right to have boundaries, right? That, you had to do whatever anybody else wanted to go along with it. And so, now as an adult, you're learning that you have the right to set boundaries, that that's actually a healthy thing to do. It's not, an uncompassionate thing to do. Like the boundary protects your compassion so that you have compassion to share with other people. So you first, you got to get up the courage to set the boundary, and then you're immediately met with the guilt trip from the abusive person because they're not going to like that boundary. They're going to be pissed. They're going to be angry. They're going to want to try to manipulate that, and so that's where you got to be there for yourself and not compromise the boundary. Set the boundary and enforce it and mean it. Don't compromise it, because if you compromise the boundary, then that abusive person learns that you're just always going to compromise the boundary. And so as soon as you set the boundary, they're going to go ahead and try to abuse that again, or to guilt trip you again, or to shame you again, and don't let them do that. Remember and recognize that you have the right to have boundaries. You have the right to have boundaries. And this was, Ross Rosenberg's book, The Human Magnet Syndrome. He describes he calls it the continuation or the continuum of self. The extreme codependence being like a -5, the extreme narcissistic kind of personality being the +5. And that could be anyone on the cluster B personality disorder. And, in the continuum of self, what he describes is like your ability to express your needs, feelings, wants, boundaries, right? So the codependent, like the -5, has like zero boundaries, never expresses a need, never expresses their feelings. It feels like crushing sense of guilt to have any of that because they were taught that somewhere in childhood, and then down the line, like the +4 or -4, -3, -2. Now -2, now this person, realizes they have the right to have boundaries and they don't have as much of the crushing guilt to set boundaries. But, when they set a boundary and the other person comes with guilt, there's still that part of them maybe that's like, well, do I really have the right to have that boundary? Second guessing, but then they enforce the boundary, right? And so you'll see yourself improving along this continuum as you reinforce that and remind yourself that you have the right to have those boundaries, and that's a healthy thing. Yes, but it's hard. At the end of the day, I don't resent myself. The resentment on myself is far worse to deal with than the guilt of disappointing someone. You don't resent yourself for having boundaries or for having boundaries good. Yeah, because when you have like that crushing guilt and then you feel like bad, you feel like you're a bad person because you set that boundary. So when you're getting over that, because if I didn't, I would hate myself. Yeah. So, you know, when you're recognizing that you don't have that resentment for yourself anymore, then you know that you're healing, you know that you're progressing, you're learning, you know, along the boundaries. And it's like a continual lesson, you know, like you learn over and over again. And the boundaries lesson, you only learn through practice. You know, you can set all the boundaries you want in your mind, but it doesn't become real until you meet face to face with the person who's going to challenge that boundary. And it will happen. And it will happen almost immediately upon setting a new boundary. It's called the law of verification. The universe comes in and it's like, here you go. You said you wanted that, or you said you didn't want that. Now, how are you going to do? You know, and that's your opportunity to step up and to enforce that boundary. You know, and easier said than done, right? But through experience, that's how you learn. You make mistakes, maybe you walk away with a little bit of guilt for a while, you know, that kind of thing. But if you learn more and more and more, and then it just becomes more easy. And then you find like it just flows off your tongue to set that boundary. It's like it's a lot easier to set that boundary than it was before. And then you move on to new boundaries and you keep working on these lessons until you start to develop a very healthy sense of boundaries. And then eventually you start to meet people who just instantly recognize and respect those boundaries. Or maybe they push the limit a little and then you reinforce the boundary and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. No problem. You know, no problem. That's a healthy person. That's when you know you're starting to attract more healthy people. Oofta, glad I'm learning. That was so Minnesotan. Okay. Good job. Yeah, you are learning. These are hard lessons, the boundary lessons. You know, these are the big, big lessons that the codependents are learning moving forward, is that you have the right to boundaries, and you and only you can set and enforce those boundaries to protect your values, to protect your feelings, to protect your thoughts, your perceptions of reality. And that's okay. Someone says, love the internet. If I was here during my marriage divorce, I would not have lost the love of my life. My daughter, who doesn't really know me but hates me and always will. Another sadness I have to live with. Sadness is not good enough to describe that loss. Yeah, I'm so sorry. You know, hopefully through the internet, you can find each other at some point, you know, reconnect at some point. And for whatever reason right now, you know, things are the way they are. And you can't change the past. You know, you can't change the past. You can't change what happened. You can only change your perspective of that. And that's the lesson that you learn from it. And then how you move forward from it. You know, and the actions that you take right now, today, tomorrow, moving forward, you know, to make things different, to do things in a different way, you know, to learn from the past and to make different decisions. And while we can never change what happened, you know, the part that you can change is your perspective, you know, how you see it. Because if you just see it as something negative or something awful, then it's always going to feel like that, you know, and it's always going to kind of like just fill your life with this heavy feeling and these heavy emotions and keep attracting more of that. But if you can look at that and extract some kind of lesson, something of value that you can take forward, you know, to do something different, to do something better in the future, then you've learned something. Then you've transmuted that mistake into a lesson, or you've transmuted that negative experience into some kind of treasure, some kind of purpose moving forward. You can do it. Let me catch up here and see, did I miss something? Okay. He says, I was forced out, gave mother what she wanted, me out of their lives. But daughter is told that since moved away, I had abandoned her. I never wanted to end our relationship. See, this is very sad. And this is what happens over and over again with these cluster B types is, you know, they will tell the child, they'll very much gaslight, distort the reality of that child and tell the child that, you know, the other parent, it was all their fault. They did something, they abandoned, you know, however that is. And they really twist up, you know, that child, and that child ends up suffering a lot. And that's very sad. Yes, using kids as weapons, as you said. I mean, this is like, it's so common that this happens with co-parenting with a narcissist or someone on the cluster B personality disorder. And, you know, that word abandonment, that just sounds like borderline. You know, when I hear that word, I think, is that a borderline situation? You know, because that's their big thing, is the abandonment, the rejection. Even though they'll push you away, they'll call it abandonment. But I am still shameful for not fighting harder, guilty. you can't blame yourself, because you probably did everything that you could possibly do, and you had to save yourself at some point, because you're not going to be able to be a good father to that girl, if you're totally destroyed by her mother. Like you'll never be able to have a positive relationship with her, because you're not going to be able to be the person that you're trying to be, so here you are working on yourself, leaving the situation. And I hear this story from a lot of men who leave an abusive woman, whether it's their wife or their girlfriend, and they have children, and they feel this like horrible shame, even feeling like they abandoned the kids in some way, in order to get out of that situation, but they just had to. And sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes they make it like impossible for you to stay. And sometimes you just have to make that decision to get out so you can save yourself, so that you can try to save that kid. And, kids are not stupid. Like kids pick up on a lot of stuff, and she could be feeding her all kinds of bullshit, but it could be that kid in a few years realizes something's just not right. And maybe that child seeks you out somehow online, or maybe that child somehow gets in contact with you, or something happens, and somehow you can come back into the life of that child. Maybe the child can choose to live with you, and maybe, down the road, now you've got your place together, you've got your job together, you've got your life together, you're moving forward on your life purpose, and now it's the perfect time for that child to come back in your life, because you can take care of her. You can be that person that you want to be the father that you want to be. Someone says here, I had something happen the other day that triggered me. I was being silly and being myself around a close friend who was really crank. She said some mean things like my ex used to say. I was instantly triggered back into the anxiety I felt about my narc. She's never been like that to me before, but I don't want to be caught blindsided. She openly admitted to me she was using a guy as her rebound from her ex. She said she didn't give a crap about him. Is there any good way to address things with her? Not sure if she's just a narc or has PTSD from her last relationship. If she's saying some things to you that are sounding a lot like your ex, there's the chance that person that you just never noticed, that person had some kind of cluster B, trait as well, and some kind of cluster B disorder. And like, I found myself in that situation. It was even this year, I realized I had some friendships still that should not have been in my life. And I just didn't see it. Like somehow it didn't come out. Somehow I didn't see it. Somehow I rationalized to myself that was okay. And then, once I started dealing with it in my life and getting those people out of my life, then it became really obvious when those toxic things popped up. And it was like, whoa, yeah, that sounds just like so-and-so. Huh. And then it happened again, and I was like, no, that's a no-no. So like, when you start to see those signs, like if you say something, or maybe you don't even have to say something, maybe it's just so clear to you that you realize you just have to take a step back. And sometimes, the thing about sharing with friends is like, you might share really vulnerable things with them, and then you feel like they're going to use those things against you, and they might, like the smear campaign, they might invent false accusations about you and say all sorts of stuff about you. And sometimes it's just better not to confront them, just to go no contact, just to be really busy and just not get involved with them anymore. And, a real friend is going to own up to what they did. A real friend down the road is going to be like, why did so-and-so just ditch me like that? Like, why did they disappear out of my life? And then maybe they remember those things that they did, and they call you up or they email you, and they're like, I remember when I did that, and I'm so sorry. Like, I realized like that was a really toxic thing to do. Like, I don't want to do that thing, like, that's not who I am. And I made that decision, because of this or whatever, but like really owning up to their stuff, and not like fluff, and not like, well, I only did that because I was anxious. Really admit, maybe they admit like one thing, but not like the big thing, which is like the subtle criticisms and undermining, that sort of thing. Like, be really cautious, and like the whole way that they go about contacting you. Like, did they invent a Facebook profile to contact you? Did they text you from an unknown number? That's sneaky. All of that says sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. And none of that says, this is like a genuine attempt to make amends, you know, and to reconcile with you. So I would urge a lot of caution if you're noticing toxic signs, you know, with that person, because it could just be a codependent who's just really, really toxic, carrying over things from her last relationship, and still not a healthy person to be around. So you want to set some distance and then see how things progress over time, you know, because time is the ultimate, you know, proof of what happens. You know, how does that person approach you? If they ever approach you, did they ever really own the stuff they did? Or is it just some kind of fluff? And is it done, you know, with some kind of clandestine way of getting back into your life? Are they using a fake, you know, social media thing, or are they inventing some new number to contact you because they know that you've blocked them and stuff? That's really tricky. Yeah, she did. We have a close-knit circle of girls, so I can't go no contact, but I think I can back off a lot from the friendship since she's starting to take things out on me. She was controlled by a narc, but she didn't do her self-work, so she's really toxic. She's still in denial, and yes, she's made a fake profile to creep on her ex-narc. Here's the thing, too. She could be a codependent who's in a toxic place. She could also be another person on the cluster B. She could be the borderline type. Very often a borderline type will get involved with someone else on the cluster B. You know, it could be a sociopath or a narcissist, you know, and they think that they're the only victim, but in fact, they were involved in a switch dynamic where they took turns abusing one another. So be very careful. That's what I learned about my friends that I had to cut off, was that actually they had these tendencies as well, and they were not safe to be around. And so, you know, be really open-minded in how you perceive that. So you're talking about a close-knit circle of girls, and that's a shame, because it could get to the point, you know, you'll notice really quickly if those are narcissists, they're going to start to get the other girls gossiping and against you, and the smear campaign and the flying monkeys. That is what predictably will happen if that's a narcissist, you know, because this is like a tight-knit group. She's going to want to like win people over to her side and say things about you. If that starts to happen, no good. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully she's just been in a really bad toxic situation and needs to heal that stuff about herself, you know. But a codependent deeply in denial with a lot of fleas, as they call it, like the negative attributes, that person can be really toxic to be around too. I hate how she takes advantage of people. She admits it, feels guilty, but chooses to gloss over it. Okay, be really careful, because now that's starting to sound like the borderline. The borderline has some remorse. The borderline has some empathy. That's why they're really tricky to pick out. And, you know, if she is taking advantage of people knowingly, not a good situation. Like, she's got a manipulative potential. She's admitting that. You know, that doesn't mean that, you know, she's going to admit everything that she's doing. And that doesn't mean that she's going to take full self-responsibility. And that doesn't mean that she's going to change anything, you know? And so I would be very cautious about that. That could very well be a borderline situation. Dang, that's unfortunate. I will choose to back off. Yeah, you know, just when you set the boundary, that's the proof. Like, you'll see based on the reaction how toxic that person is when you set the new boundary. When you know, say, I got to take some time for me, I got to focus on work, or I got to focus on family, or I got to focus on this project, or, you know, whatever that is. Or, you know, you're not available for the phone calls or the texting or whatever it is. And if that person starts to get, you know, overtly aggressive and bullyish about that, or covertly manipulative, like guilt tripping, triangulation, that sort of stuff, then you know that's just a toxic person. You don't have to find the perfect label. All you need to put on there is the label of manipulative person and step away, and know that you're better off not hanging out with that. And, you know, hopefully things work out with your group of friends. You know, hopefully it doesn't get to the point where you end up having to leave the group of friends because everybody becomes the flying monkey, you know, and that can happen. It can definitely happen. So be really cautious about that, because, you know, once everybody else is ganging up on you, then you start to lose your sense of reality, you know, And that's when the gaslighting, it becomes like the mobbing, you know, like everybody else's perception. And you really doubt your perception because you're like, oh, it's all of them and it's just me. Maybe I am the wrong one. And that's really dangerous. I'm sure they will. The group of girls have a good head on their shoulders. Okay, good. So hopefully they see it. I just need not to play the game. Exactly. Because that game only works if you play along, you know, and that's the thing is you just got to stand up and decide I'm not playing that game anymore. I'm not enabling that game, because the only way it works is if we enable it. And we don't realize that, like, we have all the power. Those of us who are on the other end of the manipulation, you have all the power. It doesn't look like that. The whole game is set up to make you think that you are powerless, right? That they have all the power and you just need to do what they want you to do, and then everything will be okay. But you don't realize that if you don't play along, if you don't enable that, you know, if you don't give in and rationalize and doubt yourself and compromise yourself and do what they want, then the game's over. You know, and you keep doing that over and over again, and they realize, like, you're no fun to play with because you're not playing along, and they can't win. They can't get out of you what they want to get out of you. They're going to move on to another target. They're going to find someone else who's a lot easier. They're going to try it first. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But then if you hold your boundary, you know, you maintain that limit, eventually they're just going to go somewhere else because they're going to get tired of that. It only works if you play along. You have the power. That's how you empower yourself, is you own that and you stop reacting to that. You don't give in like you did before. You don't react like you did before. And for those of you who haven't read yet, Dr. George Simon's book, In Sheep's Clothing, you'll very clearly see these covert manipulative tactics that they'll use. And then he talks about, you know, how you can react differently so that you don't give in to that. So check out that book if you haven't seen it yet, and just keep reminding yourself, I'm not going to play that game. I don't play that game anymore. Like, I don't care how enticing you make that game or how much you really try to provoke me to want to get involved in that game. I know if I play that game, I lose. So I'm not going to play that game. Just be really clear with yourself. That's your boundary. Not playing that game. Not playing that game. Someone asked, in your interview with Dr. Simon, he mentioned the change in paradigm in this country. It's getting worse because corporate America rewards narcissism. Culture has forgotten that even a pack of wolves rejects the bully who starts eating the flock. They all get together and shun them unless they change their behavior, but currently they are encouraged. That's the thing is, you know, as a society, we need to start stepping up and, you know, stop enabling it. Like in the workplace, like this is like just all over the place. It's like rampant in workplaces, this kind of manipulative abuse that's taking place. And as you mentioned, and as Dr. Simon mentioned, like these kinds of things, these kinds of narcissistic behaviors are often rewarded in corporate environments, you know, because you move up that ladder, you become powerful, you know, you earn lots of money for the company, you know, and all that. And that's really unfortunate that it's being rewarded, you know, because it's also in the interest of the company. The company itself is narcissistic, you know, but then the person who's the narcissist helps bring the company up. They're both winning, you know, so the company's not going to fire that person, you know, because they're getting something out of it, you know. But in the workplace or in the family or in any kind of group situation, you know, it really comes down to being the bystander or the survivor, you know, who stops playing that game, who calls it out and doesn't allow it to keep happening. That way, you know, hopefully other people start paying attention and they realize like they don't want to play along with that. They don't want to encourage that. And eventually like those people get shunned by society because nobody really wants to be an outcast. And the only way these people are still being successful is because society is celebrating it or looking the other way when it's happening and condoning it, you know, directly or indirectly, because not taking a stand is standing for the abuser. And people need to realize that, you know, and hopefully more of that happens in society. But yeah, we're sort of at this really dangerous point where that's prevailing and it's really becoming an epidemic. Like it's spreading like wildfire. Someone added in here, look at the Kardashians, Kanye, Trump, Hillary. They're all extremely selfish. They all play games. They take no accountability. It's all about stepping on everyone else to get where you need to be, stepping on people covertly. Exactly. The covert ones are the most dangerous ones because you don't see it coming. Like the overt ones are more obviously the bullies, you know, but the covert ones are tricky, really tricky, the way that they disguise that abuse, like very subtly, that you really have to know what to look for to see it. And most people don't see it because most people don't know what to look for. And that's why you want to learn about the tactics that they're learning. Once you learn about the tactics, you watch the politicians on TV and you're like, psychopath, sociopath, narcissist, like you see it and you're like, it's full of it. You don't really want to vote for any of those people because you don't really want to vote for that and bring that into power. And that's where we're at right now. We feel like we're trapped. We feel like we have to choose. We have to make these choices in this double bind. And that's what every narcissist does in a relationship, in a one-on-one relationship, is the double bind, the illusion of choice, this or this. And you don't really want either one of those, but you feel like you have to choose one of those. And then you end up feeling horrible because you're compromising yourself. You're compromising your integrity. You're compromising your values. You're compromising your identity and who you are. Someone says, that happened to me too. Just as I was doing my best, a wolf came out with the most bizarre accusations. I fought back and won, proved it was lies, said I had threatened a coworker. This guy wanted my job. Yeah, they'll do that. They'll do all sorts of awful stuff. And then they'll go around work and getting everyone against you. And that's why, if you're working for a company, and you're already noticing there's problems, you got to get your resume, your CV, like up to date and keep it really sharp. And if things get really bad, you just got to look for another job. Like sometimes you just can't resolve things there. Sometimes you just have to get out of that situation and, cut your losses. And it's really sad when that happens, when it's like some kind of job you love, or, you've worked really hard to get to that point in that company or in your career. And then you got to compromise something to start over. Not always. Sometimes you can find a much better situation to get into. Or sometimes it's like you get to that point where you're like, all right, I'm finally going to be self-employed now. Like I'm done working for these jerks and I want to be self-employed so I can control my work and I can control my workday and I can control everything that's happening. And I don't have to deal with these people sabotaging or false accusations or just risking losing it all, getting involved in a business partner maybe, and like, whether it's money or your investment of time and labor and brains, and like you walk out of there with nothing because they stole everything from you. Like that's really sad when that happens, and it happens so often. So the more self-sustained you are, the better, and the more fluid you are, the more flexible you are, the more willing you are to recognize that, every relationship or every job could be temporary. Like be willing to walk away. Be willing to walk away from this person that you think today is the love of your life, but tomorrow can turn out to be some kind of like, monster in disguise, abusive person that you just didn't see coming, but then you saw it coming, and don't hold on just because of that early idea or illusion of what that was. Like be prepared to accept that if this ends tomorrow, you are willing to walk away, that you were going to give it 100% today, 100% today and every day. But if suddenly that changes that reality and it's no longer what you thought it was, that you're willing to let go and move on. And same with that job, maybe the job seems like the dream job and everything's going great and that's awesome. And you're giving it 100% every day, but you're still keeping that resume, that CV updated just in case, socking away some money just in case you have to be unemployed for a period of time looking for another job, because you get to that point where it's just so bad that you have to quit to save your health and sanity, or you have to quit to save your reputation before these people destroy you, or they literally run you out and you have to go, and you end up with nothing. Like this could happen, and it does happen so frequently, and if you have a history of attracting these people in your life, you can expect that it's going to happen. Like until you heal those things within yourself, it's going to keep coming. And even as you do heal yourself, you'll still find these rogue narcissists that come up just to tempt you every now and then, so always be on guard and always be aware of yourself and of your surroundings, and always be willing to walk away. That's the thing about negotiations, is the person who has the upper hand is the one who's willing to walk away. Don't be so set on it that you refuse to let go of your grip on that relationship or that job or that whatever. Be willing to walk away. Know that you are worth it. Know that if you have to walk away to save yourself, you're going to do it because you're worth it. Someone said, I did okay. He was encouraged to go because they would have had legal problems, but his monkeys didn't like it. I didn't have a degree and was doing work you can't get without one. So it took me many years to get that far. So I was scared. Of course, the whole time, instead of working so hard for the corporation, if I had self-care, I would have done minimal work and gone for my degree. Hindsight is 2020. Yeah, I mean, hindsight is 2020, right? But the amazing thing is that you did learn from that now, right? So hopefully you'll take different precautions moving forward. You would make maybe different, you would take different actions, make different decisions moving forward, you know, if that situation should arise again. Someone added, they paint themselves as helpers, world peace leaders, and mentors, yet they have a dirty agenda. Honestly, I am so sad that I have to choose between misogynistic man and a woman who is fraudulent and hypocritical. Ugh, sorry, but it's sad our leaders are the epitome of what we're trying to get rid of. That's the thing, you know, like if this isn't the wake-up call for America, if this election isn't the wake-up call for America to realize like this stuff is messed up. And a lot of what we're accepting as normal is really messed up and not normal at all. And we really need to start changing things. And how do we do that? I don't know. But the more people that start talking about it, the more people that start realizing it, the more dialogue will happen, the more we'll bounce ideas off of each other, the more ideas will come out and actions will be taken. You know, people with the resources, people with the brains and the labor can come together and create new solutions moving forward. Like a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned, you know, in Aurora, Colorado, it was like this tiny town in Colorado, you know, Colorado legalized cannabis a couple years ago. They had this little city had a $5 million surplus. They didn't know what to do with $5 million, right? What a horrible problem to have. So what did they do? They invested like 1.5 million in helping the homeless and like this money for this and this money for that. And like the people raised that money. That money came from people's pockets. That money went to stores. That money went to taxes in the municipality. And the municipality said, okay, so what do we do with this money that we have? Like we didn't have to ask the federal government. We didn't have to ask the state government. It came from the municipality or whatever. Maybe it came from the state, I'm sorry, through the marijuana program. However, that happened that town, you know, had allocated $5 million to do what they wanted with, like, you know, meeting the resources with the people who are willing to do it. They created programs. There were people who wanted to create the programs for the homeless, and they put that into action so they could help people. They create real solutions. They didn't wait around for Big Brother to decide that they wanted to help the homeless, because they don't give a crap about the homeless. If they gave a crap about the homeless, there wouldn't be like 3 or 5 times more abandoned homes in foreclosure than there are homeless people living on the streets. You know, looking at that, it doesn't make any sense at all to like a rational, compassionate, empathic person, but to the powers that be, they just don't care. They don't care. So, you know, hopefully this election is a wake-up call for people to wake up and realize that like we need to change things here, and that the representation of those people, you know, it's just, it is the epitome of what's wrong in society. Someone adds, one of my favorite quotes is the plain fact that, the plain fact that the planet does not need more successful people, but it does desperately need more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of every kind. It needs people who live well in their places. It needs people of moral courage willing to join the fight, to make the world habitable and humane. And these qualities have little to do with success as we have defined it. Amen. I love that quote. I love seeing that. And like I was saying earlier, you know, that comment, I've heard it from cousins, I've heard it from strangers, you know, I'm sorry you're not more successful. You just want to like give that a middle finger, you know, because like there's no empathy there, you know, like you don't take that with you when you die. You don't take your riches with you. You don't take your giant houses and your giant cars and all your toys and like everything you've accumulated in the material world. That is an illusion. That stuff is nothing. It's not real. You don't take that with you when you die. So, you know, what you take with you are the actions that you take, the memories that you make, the effect that you create on other people. That was Jim Carrey who said, like, you know, the real currency in life is the effect that you have on other people. That's real. That's your legacy that lives on long after you, not some company or corporation that you built and the amount of money that's coming in and, you know, this big house and big toys and all that. None of that's meaningful. You know, yeah, we do need more people who are willing to stand up and fight for something and something real and help one another and recognize that we don't have to wait for the big savior, right? Because like how much of a reflection is that, the societal picture and the individual picture? The individual, has this hole, this thing that's not fulfilled, right? Some earlier wound that happened, and then the narcissistic person comes along and hones in on that and fills that wound, whether it's finances or emotional thing or whatever it is, and they promise big things and they make big talks, and then they end up destroying that person, and but they come in as the savior, right? So then that person transfers their approval to them. Same thing, the politicians come in as the savior and everybody worships them, but what do they do with that? What actions are they really taking, but really? And that's what we need to look more at, and take more actions and recognize that we have the power. We're just enabling that. We're settling for that. Like, we need to organize amongst ourselves and create more grassroots, organizations and meeting of minds and ideas and resources and talents and effort and work, and create something together. We can circumvent that mess. We don't have to go through that channel. You're welcome. What other questions? I think I have one more question on, here's one. It is encouraging to meet others of like mind. Maybe the pendulum is starting to go the other way, but for now, talk like that and you're going to be called a socialist, which they connect to communism and everything terrible, when they don't understand socialism was hijacked and never got a chance. Yeah, socialism does get hijacked. Look at Brazil. That's what happens when psychopaths and sociopaths get a hold of a socialist government programs. They pocket that money and they will exploit those policies. It doesn't always turn out, like Sweden and Iceland and some of the positive countries. It could go really, really bad. And that's what concerns me about socialism in this country, is because the government is full of sociopaths and psychopaths. And what will they do with that kind of power? It's just a shame. I think we need more parties. I think we need, more ideas coming out, more talk happening. Okay, let me read here this, I had another question here. Okay, so some woman emailed me and said she's caring for her narcissistic mother, who is 97 and has congestive heart failure. Even at her age, she is of sound mind and is continuing her abusive comments. I just found out that I am a victim of this because I didn't know it existed. Now memories are flooding in and I'm so preoccupied with what has happened all these years. My question is, how can I help care for her and be in her home knowing she abused me all these years? You can imagine my resentment. Yeah, I know that resentment. I grew up with that. And, I had a real conversation with my mom about it for the first time in my life last week or the week before when I went to visit her. And, the thing that was different in that visit from any other visit before was that I was finally able to depersonalize the abuse, to look at it in the very sterile, clinical way, to watch her do her thing. And it was like subtitles or news flashes were coming across, my radar. And it was like guilt tripping, rationalization, and it was like every tactic was coming across and I could just see what she was doing. And I wasn't getting as emotionally wrapped into it. And I was able to present it to her in a way that, it was almost like as if I wasn't the person that I was all those years. Because if I had approached her at any other time before, it wouldn't have gone like that. I would have gotten a lot more emotional about that. I would have been a lot more wrapped up in that. I would have self-doubted and second-guessed and compromised, my beliefs or what I was trying, to say when she came up with the rationalizations and the denial and all that. And it didn't happen like that this time. I was able to depersonalize it. And then, she got upset, I think, that I wasn't angry. And she said to me, "You're angry." And I said, "Yeah, I am angry." And anger is a normal, natural response to abuse. However, I don't feel like I'm approaching you with a lot of anger, and I don't feel like I have the anger that I had 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, decades ago. I hated her decades ago, and up until not that long ago. And it wasn't until I really accepted who she was and what her disorder is that I was able to look at that in a really sterile, clinical way and depersonalize the abuse and maintain now, you know, a long distance relationship with minimal contact. And, you know, it sounds like this person who wrote this is, you know, is taking care of this person. And that is very, very noble of you to be willing to do that, you know, despite the abuse. I mean, that just shows that you're a really, really compassionate person. And you just need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself too, that you're protecting yourself with good boundaries, that you're approaching it in a gray rock way. Don't react to her. Don't react to her provocations. You know, it might help you to say something like, "That's interesting. That's interesting, Mom. Why would you say that? That's interesting, Mom. Why would you feel that way? I'm just curious," you know, and let her come up with whatever she comes up with, you know, and just try to deflect that as much as possible. Don't take it personally. Recognize that she has a serious problem. She has a disorder, and it is not a mental illness. It's just her way of being. And, you know, she's 97. She's not going to survive that much longer. She's just not going to change at this point. You know, chances are that's the way she's going to coast out of here. And, you know, just take the opportunity for you to get to whatever place you need to get to, you know, whatever it is that you need to realize with her, whatever you can do to set yourself free while she's still here and alive. The more you can do for yourself, the better. The more you can set yourself off that hook, that you can release that you could recognize that you're not the little girl or little boy. I'm pretty sure that was a woman, but I just want to put that out there. Let's just go with women for here. You know, you're not the little girl, you know, who grew up with that mother anymore. She doesn't have power and control over you anymore. You could walk away at any point and she could just die alone and get her own caretakers, you know, if it comes to that, and recognize that you have that power and that you don't need to sit around and take if it gets really bad, you know, and that you're like, okay, now it's crossing my boundaries. I just can't do it anymore. You don't have to. Like, the fact that you are there just shows that you are a really, really, really caring, kind soul, you know, and that's just beautiful karma that you're building. And I encourage you to take advantage of this time to get to whatever place you can within yourself to be okay with that. And to recognize that you have no control over her. You have no control over her thoughts, her feelings, her needs, her perceptions of reality, her actions. All of that is about her. You can't change anything about that. The only thing you have control over is yourself, and you do have control over yourself. You're not a child. She no longer has that control over you. And that was the biggest thing for me, was to get to that point to realize that, whoa, my emotions don't have to be connected to hers. She has no control over my emotions. She can say whatever she wants and do whatever she wants and deny whatever she wants and pretend she doesn't remember. And maybe she doesn't remember. None of that has anything to do with me. And no decision that she takes going forward, no action that she takes going forward has anything to do with me. You know, we had this conversation, but I'm not banking on the fact that she's going to change anything. It may never happen, and that's okay. It doesn't mean I failed. It means I stood up and I spoke my truth. And maybe for you, that's something you need to do before she dies. Maybe you feel the need to speak your truth, because you know what? Speaking the truth is love. And when people have abused you, they don't want to hear that truth. They don't want to hear that at all. They don't want to hear, "Oh, you're so cruel. It's so sad that you would say that I'm so cruel like that." They don't want to hear the truth. They know the truth, but they don't want to hear it. But you telling them the truth is love. You speaking your truth is love. It is first and foremost self-love, because you are allowed to speak your truth. You have the right to speak your truth. You're going to feel so much better when you speak your truth, even if it changes nothing outside of you. It changes everything inside of you, because you are validating yourself and you're telling yourself, I don't need your validation. I don't need you to own that abuse for me to know that was abuse. I don't need you to own what you did wrong for me to know that you really failed as a mother, that you didn't see it, that you didn't own it, that you didn't do better, that you didn't want to do better when you saw an innocent little child come into the world. So be there for yourself and give that to yourself, you know, and maybe for you, you need to speak that truth to her in some way before she dies, even if nothing nothing changes. And even if she admits nothing, just for you, just because you don't have to swallow that. And if you have any issues with your throat, like you're clearing your throat a lot, or you tend to get strep throat a lot, or a sore throat, or like things happen with your voice and your throat, you're swallowing something. You're trying to hold something down that you don't want to swallow, and you need to speak that truth, and it will liberate you. It will set you free. Again, nothing has to change in her reality. Nothing has to change outside. With her, it changes inside yourself. So be there first and foremost for yourself. Someone asked, I was wondering about your time with your mother. It's okay if you don't want to share for privacy, but I was wondering how it went. Does it make you sad that you can't be vulnerable with your mother? I know it makes me sad that I can't be vulnerable with my father. I use my tough voice with him. It's something I designed for him. It's not me at all. Yeah. People will tell me, people who know me, they're like, it's funny how your voice changes when you talk about her. And I'm like, I know. And I recognize it. The way I talk to my dad is very different than the way I talk to my mom. And it's always going to be that way because I have very different boundaries with her. And we had a very different history than I had with my dad or with someone else that I know in my life. And I can tell, I can tell how my body language changes, and I can tell how my body feels different, when I talk about her or to her. And I had to give myself that permission, to speak my truth, to own my truth, and to not be swayed by whatever reaction she had, because that had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with me, and anything that she does moving forward has nothing to do with me. She may never change anything. She said she's going to get help, but she didn't admit what she did at all. She went with the, I don't remember doing it thing. I'm just so shocked. Really? Really? General sense of things, because I blocked out a lot before the year 1999, 2000, when I left that state and moved somewhere else. I started a new life and I just shut it out. That's one of the PTSD things. And I don't doubt that she was an abusive victim. She was a victim of abuse, and she hasn't faced that. She's in denial about the abuse that took place at home. Her father, I believe, was a sociopath and a pedophile. He abused me. Her mother, I believe, was a narcissist, even though my grandma, her mom, was my soulmate. She loved me unconditionally. I really felt that. I felt devastated when she died because we had a very special bond. But I see the way now, talking to my cousins and whatnot, and finding out how she treated my cousin, that she didn't have that relationship with my cousin. She treated my cousin like a scapegoat. And so she had these tendencies. And I've heard stories of her, when my mom and her siblings were growing up. And, I told my mom, part of this is going to be you having to face what happened to you. You've dissociated from that, just like you've dissociated from your abusing, of us, growing up. And you're going to have to face that in order to move through it. Maybe she never does. And maybe she just faces it, to where she can extract the fact that she was a victim and never own any of her stuff. I don't know. I don't know what she's going to do with it. But the important thing for me was that I let myself off the hook, and I detached, my emotional state from that. I don't have to feel those fears. I don't have to subscribe to her fears. I don't have to subscribe to any of her belief systems or her reality, or respond to her how she wants me to respond to her. I am my own person. And that is everything that every child of a narcissist needs to realize. And it might be as an adult. It might be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s that you wake up and realize you have the right to be your own person. I am my own person. And that's what you got to give to yourself. That's the validation you have to give to yourself, is you have every right to be your own person. And you don't have to feel guilty about that. Oh, thank you. Someone says, my heart goes out to you. The family dynamics go so deep. They really do. My family has some wild history. I want to break that cycle. That is one of my goals in life. Good. Because that's all you can do, is stand up and say, it ends with me. Whether you have children or not, whether you technically pass this forward, to the next generation or not, you are changing everything by changing it within yourself. It's your genetics, your DNA is like holographically, I believe, connected to your whole lineage, like backward and forward. And you liberating yourself and standing up and saying it ends with me is going to like give this unspoken permission to other people in your family who want to tune into that and start resolving their own situations, because it doesn't just happen with one person. It's usually rampant in the extended family. It's like a familial transgenerational pattern that gets passed down. And I literally saw that like around the same time that I started liberating myself and owning what had happened and facing it and calling it abuse, I saw how other people in my family, like distant cousins, started facing their own situations, like without us even talking sometimes. And then we started talking and then more happened. But like, it was like they tuned into that frequency. And in psychedelic medicine journeys, I've seen the DNA spiral holographically, and I've watched making that shift and watch it like change the past and change the future and liberate other people and offer them that opportunity. So you are changing things, even if you don't see other people changing immediately, or your immediate family dynamics changing. You are changing something. You are stopping, you are ending the legacy of abuse. And that's all you can do, is to own it and to end it and say it ends with me. And that's no small thing, because most people aren't doing that yet. And so you doing that is giving other people permission to do that for themselves. It's giving them courage. It's giving the example. It's giving the reflection of the possibility, and you're already doing it. Like, you're here, you're doing the work. Like, you're figuring out what's going on. You're already making those changes, and that's wonderful. Someone said, narcs demand that we allow them their point of view, but we don't have the right for ours. I hear you should change this or that, make the slightest little suggestion to them and look out. Yeah. They really want to manage all of that, how everyone sees everything and themselves, yeah. I want to let you know that as soon as I can get income flow, I will donate and possibly request some personal help. Thank you. Again, I totally get it. Like, I know what it's like to be at 0 points. I totally get that. I have been there like over and over and over again. That's why I made that SANA series free to stream online. If you want the MP3, you can pay a minimal amount to download them. But, if you got no resources, like, use it, take advantage of that. It's free. You can stream it online. You're going to get a lot of value, like massive value out of it. Don't let the free price tag, confuse you and think there's no value in there. There's massive value in there. And the whole purpose of me making that available for people is because I was there. I know what that's like. That's why I do these Q&As too, is to have this free, opportunity for people, because I get it. Like, what do you do? Like, if you can't afford a therapist, or you can't afford a coach, or you can't afford some kind of holistic healer or whomever, you want to get to help you, what do you do? Right? You could listen to everything you can for free online, take advantage of everything free that you can. Utilize that and do the best that you can with that. That SANA series will help you a lot. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of that, week by week, going into these different things. And there's a meditation every week, and the meditation will help a lot. And it'll give you that tool. Like, the more you meditate, the more you cultivate that self-awareness. And the more self-awareness you have, that's like stage 1. Like, stage 1 is becoming aware of the problem, not just aware of the narcissist and what is a narcissist and what did the narcissist do and what were the dynamics of abuse. That's important. It's important to recognize that and label that person as manipulative and label that as abuse. That, that's important. But the self-awareness also, the awareness also of the self, focusing on yourself, what went wrong inside of me? Like, it wasn't your fault that the abuse happened, but there's something in you that you can change now moving forward, so that you don't pre-qualify as a victim of that, so that you can heal from the past, so that you can move forward and meet positive people that will help uplift you mutually in your life, and not suck you dry and not want to exploit you for your resources, like all the people, before that you may have met. And so, so take that time to cultivate through meditation your self-awareness. Like, that's no small thing. Like, 5 minutes every day maybe is where you start, and then it becomes 10 minutes, and then it becomes 20, or however it goes. And you start to cultivate that more and more. It becomes more and more natural for you to like sit down or lay down and just like really tune into yourself and tune into where are you at right now. And the more you become aware of that, maybe you write it like on a little sticky note, and you put it on your mirror, and you put it on your desk, and you put it in the kitchen, and it says, where are you at right now? scale of 1 to 10, in your body, mind, and spirit. Where are you at right now? Are you at a 1? Are you at like almost the bottom? Are you at a 5? Are you doing like in the middle? Okay. Are you like a 10? Are you like feeling amazing right now? And like check in with yourself frequently, like, and why? And how do I calibrate that? How do I know inside my body that I'm at an 8 versus, a 4? How do I know inside my mind that I'm at a 6 versus a 3? How do I know inside like my spirit that I feel like a 10 versus a 1? And check in with yourself. And sometimes you got to leave that reminder, like set it up on your phone. Like maybe you have like a calendar and you can set reminders or like a timer, and it pops up and the reminder goes off at, 11 o'clock and 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock. And it says, how are you doing right now? Where are you at right now? Scale of 1 to 10. And that just like encourages you to become more self-aware and to check in with yourself more frequently and see where you're at. Because the more you know where you're at, the more you recognize what's going on, the more, you have the opportunity to take action to change things. Because if you aren't aware of what's wrong, like how will you ever change anything? And then just ask yourself like, okay, I'm at a 6 right now. What's one step I can take right now to get to a 7? What's one little step I can take right now in this moment to get to a 7? And then go do that. And so the more you practice this, the more you're going to teach yourself that you're there for yourself. This is the self-nurturing. This is the self-care. This is the self-respect. This is the self-love. And the more you send that message to yourself, the more your self-esteem and your self-worth and your self-love and your self-trust and all of that starts to build. It becomes a very positive feedback loop versus the old negative feedback loops of the past. Yeah, no worries, kiddo. Like, I totally get that. Yeah, according to them, it's the victim's fault. They stole the cell phone because they wanted it, and the victim left their car door open. Really? Yeah. Yeah, that's just really crappy. That's the rationalization of the abuse. That's when the abuser is rationalizing that it's okay that they did what they did because you did that. Again, focusing on your reaction to the abuse, or, well, you did that, so I did this. You wore a skirt, so you wanted to have sex. No, I'm allowed to wear a skirt. That doesn't mean anything except that I wanted to wear a skirt today, that kind of thing. Same deal. Yeah, you're weak, so you asked for it, that sort of thing. Yeah. That none of that is valid. All of these are rationalizations. This is excuse making that manipulative, abusive people do to justify their abuse. Don't buy the excuses. Don't accept the excuses. Hold them accountable to that. And don't let them keep doing that in the future. Don't hang out with people who do that kind of stuff. Yeah, he calls you name like that all the time. That's verbal abuse. That's verbal abuse. That's not okay. And then, oh, you're just too sensitive. Oh, you're just a little girl. You can't take it. Or, it's just a joke, or however that goes. Again, that's minimization or couching, as some people call it, making light of the abuse. Like, it's no big deal. It's a form of gaslighting. And that shouldn't fly. Don't accept that stuff. Okay, guys. So it's been about 2 hours. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Yeah, exactly. His values are covert manipulation, and yours are honesty and authenticity. And honor your values. Honor your values, and don't compromise your values. Don't compromise your integrity for someone else. So you're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for tonight. I'm so sorry that the earlier Q&A, I just totally blew it. I didn't hit the record button. I don't know what happened that I didn't do it. And it was a really great session. A lot of great stuff unfortunately got missed. But again, just to make that announcement too, next Monday is a holiday in USA. It's 4th of July. So I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to do the webinars next week. And it's just the one day. So we'll be back the following week, same time, 2 webinars, noon and 6 p.m. Pacific time. Okay, I'm going to get this one back uploaded in a few hours after I process and edit it. And thank you all for coming. Thank you for taking care of yourself. I'm sending you all a big hug. See you soon.